Actually, my father started us singing because he was disgusted with the group that he was singing with. He was singing with an all-male group.
Performance you'll never forget.
I guess the Royal Command performance, my very first one.
Time doesn't just age beauty, it rewrites fame. There was a time when these women stopped hearts and turned heads, lighting up MTV screens and redefining what it meant to be bold, sensual, and unforgettable. They weren't just singers, they were R&B goddesses, icons of an era. But now, if they walked past you on the street, you might not even glance twice. The spotlight faded, the music slowed, and their names became soft echoes in the memories of devoted fans. Today, we're revisiting the stories of 35 black R&B queens who once owned the stage with breathtaking beauty and unmatched talent, to understand how time, fame, and silence transformed them from icons into mysteries. Because the truth is, you might have already walked by one and never even known it. Mavis Staples. Mavis Staples is more than a living legend. She's a survivor of racial terror, lost love, and aching loneliness. As the soul-stirring voice of the Staples singers, she helped define gospel and R&B while becoming a fearless symbol of the civil rights movement. Her voice shook the conscience of America with anthems like "I'll Take You There" and "Respect Yourself." But behind the power and glory was a life shaped by pain. In 1963, during a tour stop in Birmingham, Alabama, a city bleeding from police brutality, Mavis, barely in her 20s, was arrested with her family for the crime of asking for gas like white folks. They were thrown in jail, humiliated, and threatened with death, simply for being black. That night changed her. Mavis didn't just sing after that, she fought with every note. Every Southern concert was a gamble with death, each highway a path through hate, each motel room a question mark of survival. Amid the chaos, something rare blossomed, a quiet, soulful love between Mavis and Bob Dylan. Two young artists, deeply connected in music and mission, nearly became husband and wife. But her father, Pop Staples, said no. And Mavis, devoted to family and the music they shared, let love go. She never married. Never had children. Just a haunting void that followed her for decades. And fate wasn't finished. Between 2000 and 2021, Mavis lost everything. Her father, then all three of her siblings. One by one, the only voices that ever stood beside her on stage, and in life, were silenced. Grief carved deep scars. Now in her 80s, Mavis Staples still takes the stage, alone but unbroken. Her music is no longer just performance. It's remembrance. It's survival. It's prayer. As she once said with quiet grace, "I keep singing, but now I sing for the souls who've gone." Dionne Warwick. Dionne Warwick, from golden glory to the edge of ruin. Dionne Warwick wasn't just a voice on the radio, she was the sound of an era. With timeless hits like "I Say a Little Prayer," and over 100 million records sold, she stood tall among giants like Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston. But behind the elegance and the gold records was a woman fighting a storm of heartbreak, betrayal, and staggering loss. Her marriage to actor and drummer William Elliott looked like a fairy tale, but it quickly unraveled into a cycle of divorce, reconciliation, and final heartbreak. They married in 1966, split a year later, got back together, and finally ended it for good in 1975. Their home was no sanctuary, just shouting matches, financial stress, and bitter disputes over parenting. Left to raise two sons on her own, Dionne kept singing, not just for audiences, but for survival. Then came the public humiliation. In 2002, she was arrested at Miami International Airport after 11 marijuana joints were discovered in a lipstick case inside her luggage. Overnight, the graceful diva was recast as a tabloid headline. Though the charges were later reduced, the damage was done. Her pristine image, carefully built over decades, had cracked. But the deepest wounds were private. In 1968, while on tour, Dionne received news that shattered her. Her brother Mansell had died in a tragic car crash. She was thousands of miles away, unable to say goodbye. The grief, mixed with growing tension between her and sister Dionne Warwick, left her increasingly isolated. Then came the final blow. In 2013, at over 70 years old, Dionne Warwick filed for bankruptcy in New Jersey, revealing she owed more than $10 million. The root of it? Years of misplaced trust in financial advisors who left her with $7 million in unpaid taxes and mounting penalties. A woman who once ruled the charts now found herself counting pennies, performing well into her 70s just to keep the lights on. For Dionne, the losses weren't just financial. They were emotional, spiritual, each setback chipping away at the belief that fame could protect you from life's cruelty. She had once soared, but now she stood alone in the shadows of a glittering past. Candi Staton. Candi Staton, the voice that survived the pain. Candi Staton wasn't just a singer. She was a survivor in sequins. The powerhouse voice behind Young Hearts Run Free, an anthem of liberation wrapped in disco, lived a life far darker than the glitter ever showed. Behind the spotlight was a woman battling demons no one clapped for: abusive marriages, alcoholism, and the crushing weight of raising 5 children through tears. In 1970, fresh off her marriage to soul star Clarence Carter, Candi believed she'd stepped into a fairy tale. But the dream quickly shattered. Clarence didn't love, he controlled. He hit. He humiliated. In 1972, after a brutal beating in their Atlanta home, Candi covered her bruises with thick stage makeup and sang through the pain. By 1973, she ran, fleeing with her children, determined to escape a living hell. But the storm wasn't over. Her fourth husband, Jimmy James, was no celebrity, but he was a tyrant. Wildly jealous and violent, he beat her with a belt after one performance in 1976. That night, she escaped barefoot into the darkness, carrying nothing but fear and a few clothes. Desperate to numb the trauma, Candi turned to alcohol. Through the late 70s and early 80s, she drank daily, sometimes stepping on stage drunk, her golden voice slurred, her spirit dimming. By 1982, she woke up one morning, her children crying beside her bed, and couldn't remember where she was. Her body was giving out. Her weight had dropped dangerously. Her voice, her lifeline, was nearly gone. That's when she turned to faith. The road back wasn't easy, she stumbled, she relapsed, but in 1983, she began to fight for herself. She returned to gospel, to God, and to the truth of who she was. Through it all, Candi was a mother. After leaving Clarence, she raised their son and 4 stepchildren alone, often broke, sometimes hungry, always exhausted. In 1975, her oldest child asked why she was never home. That question broke her more than any bruise ever did. But she kept going. Even when the industry turned its back, even when the audience forgot, Candi stood on stage and sang. With a voice cracked by pain but fueled by grace, she poured out every broken piece of herself. Love. Loss. Freedom. Survival. Because Candi Staton wasn't just a legend. She was the song that refused to die. Darlene Love. Darlene Love, from R&B legend to scrubbing hotel floors. Darlene Love once lit up the 1960s with a voice that could shake the heavens. With hits like He's a Rebel and Christmas, Baby Please Come Home, she was the golden voice of soul and R&B. But behind the dazzling vocals and stage lights was a story soaked in heartbreak and betrayal. Her talent was undeniable, yet it was exploited. Her fame, stolen. Her name, erased. At the height of her powers in 1962, she was manipulated by producer Phil Spector, who used her voice to record chart-topping hits, and then gave the credit to others like the Crystals. No recognition. No royalties. Just silence and a threat: speak out, and your career is over. 4 years, Darlene endured in silence, performing behind a forced smile while the hurt festered deep inside. By the late 1970s, the music industry had all but turned its back on her. No tours, no contracts, just faded memories. By the early 1980s, the woman who once sang for millions was cleaning hotel bathrooms in Los Angeles. And then, in 1982, while scrubbing a toilet, she heard her own voice echo through the radio. One of her old hits. That moment shattered her. From the top of the charts to the bottom of a mop bucket, she collapsed in tears, broken but not beaten. She could have stayed down. But Darlene Love was never meant to disappear. In 1986, a role on Broadway sparked a small but powerful comeback, reminding the world, and herself, of the fire she still carried. Off stage, though, her life remained a storm. Her marriage to Wesley Hodge was marked by tension, financial stress, and emotional strain. The death of her beloved father in the early 70s had already plunged her into a quiet depression, caught between grief and the responsibility of holding everything together. And even now, the pain hasn't fully lifted. But through every low, every silence, every stolen credit, Darlene Love kept singing. Not just for applause, but for survival. Because some voices are too powerful to be silenced forever. Martha Reeves. Martha Reeves, the Motown icon who faced the music and the darkness. Martha Reeves wasn't just a voice. She was a force. As the electrifying frontwoman of Martha and the Vandellas, she set the world on fire with anthems like Dancing in the Street. Songs that didn't just move your feet, but captured the heartbeat of a generation. A true Motown legend, etched into the soundtrack of American soul. But behind the radiant smile and high-energy performances was a woman silently falling apart. At the height of her fame in the 1960s, Martha was caught in a whirlwind. More than 300 shows a year, endless touring, smiling through exhaustion, signing autographs while hiding her pain. She was worn thin by the grind of fame, the emotional toll of racism in the South, and the unrelenting pressure to be perfect. Slowly, her mental health began to crack. When the group disbanded in 1972, the silence was deafening.
No spotlight. No Motown safety net. Just emptiness.
She spiraled, sleepless nights, paralyzing anxiety, and at times, thoughts of ending it all. Therapy and faith became her lifeline. But the wounds ran deep. Her 1961 marriage, rushed and turbulent, collapsed under the weight of fame and jealousy. Her husband couldn't handle her rising star and lashed out in rage. After the divorce, she was a single mom, torn between the stage and the guilt of missing milestones in her son's life. A second marriage in the 70s also fell apart. 2 failed relationships. Children sent to relatives. A life unraveling. When Motown moved on, so did the industry. By the 80s, Martha was no longer headlining arenas, she was struggling to pay her mortgage. In 1983, she nearly lost her beloved Detroit home, forced to lean on friends just to survive. From international stardom to state fairs and obscure gigs, Martha Reeves had fallen far. Though she eventually found her footing again, the scars remained. The fear of poverty.
The sting of being forgotten.
The heartbreak of giving your soul to music, and nearly losing your own in return.
Gladys Knight.
Gladys Knight, the soul queen brought to her knees by addiction and heartbreak. Gladys Knight, the voice that once soared above pain, now buried beneath it. Known as the Empress of Soul, she mesmerized the world with her rich, commanding vocals, leading Gladys Knight and the Pips through timeless classics and racking up awards that crowned her as R&B royalty. But behind the spotlight, her life spiraled into darkness. At the height of her fame in the 1970s, Gladys fell into the grip of gambling. What began as harmless bets in Las Vegas turned into a full-blown addiction. Night after night, she lost tens of thousands of dollars, chasing hope across card tables. In 1983, one devastating game wiped out her savings completely. Humiliated and broken, she disappeared for days at a time, hiding in casinos while her young children cried at home, wondering where their mother had gone. By 1989, after rehab and a powerful return to her faith, Gladys fought her way out. But the wounds were deep. The addiction wasn't her only torment. Love had betrayed her too. Married at just 16, her first husband was an addict who walked out on her and their children. Her second marriage, which promised stability, crumbled into bitter fights, ending in 1978 with a blowout argument that left her emotionally wrecked.
3 children. 3 births.
But no man ever stayed. Each broken relationship chipped away at her belief in love, leaving only music to carry her through the pain. Then, in 1999, came the unthinkable. Her eldest son, Jimmy, died of heart failure after battling addiction of his own. Gladys blamed herself. Sleepless nights turned into rivers of tears. She sobbed in the dark, haunted by guilt that nearly shattered her spirit. In 2023, she faced another crushing loss. Her beloved brother and lifelong bandmate passed away. And just when she thought it couldn't hurt more, her daughter's failed business led to public lawsuits, pulling family ties taut with tension.
From the outside, she was still a queen.
But inside, Gladys Knight had become a woman clenching her teeth just to survive. The spotlight may have lit her path, but loneliness and loss were the shadows she walked through every step of the way.
Patti LaBelle.
Patti LaBelle, stage queen, silent suffering. Patti LaBelle, unstoppable, electric, a voice that could shake the heavens. She gave the world Lady Marmalade, and reigned for decades as the undisputed queen of R&B and soul. With her explosive range, fierce fashion, and undeniable presence, she became the diva of all divas. But behind the spotlights and standing ovations was a woman silently carrying the weight of unimaginable heartbreak. She once thought love would be her safe haven. In 1969, she married Armstead Edwards, her manager, her partner, her supposed rock. But what started as a dream team slowly became a quiet emotional prison. His jealousy of her rising stardom sparked years of tension, fights, silence, distance. They shared a house, but not a home. After 32 long years, Patti made the heartbreaking decision to walk away in 2000.
The guilt crushed her.
She raised their son while still performing on stage, smiling through the pain, pretending everything was fine. But divorce wasn't the deepest scar. What truly shattered her came in a wave of loss no one should endure. Over 14 devastating years, Patti lost all 3 of her sisters to cancer: Vivian, Barbara, and finally Jacqueline. She was there, holding their hands, watching them fade, powerless to stop it. By the end, she was living in constant fear, wondering if she'd be next, if something deadly was growing inside her. Then in 1995, came her own diagnosis, type 2 diabetes. But the warning had come a year earlier, when she collapsed on stage from dangerously low blood sugar.
It was a wake-up call.
Patti gave up her beloved sweets, began daily injections, and lived under the shadow of illness. Her greatest fear? That one day her voice might give out, or worse, that the curtain would fall before she had a chance to say goodbye. Even now, those fears never fully fade. But Patti LaBelle, grieving sister, devoted mother, survivor, still sings. And when she does, it's not just music. It's resilience. It's pain wrapped in power. And it's the sound of a woman who has lived through it all and refuses to be silenced.
Diana Ross.
Diana Ross, the stage goddess behind the scandal, the silence, and the storm. Diana Ross, an icon, a trailblazer, a voice that defined generations. The dazzling centerpiece of the Supremes, Motown's crown jewel, and later a solo superstar whose name became synonymous with glamour and greatness. But behind the sequins and standing ovations lay a life riddled with heartbreak, betrayal, and quiet tragedies. In the 1960s, Diana wasn't just the face of the Supremes, she was the force that tore them apart. Her rise triggered bitter power struggles within the group. Florence Ballard, one of the original founders and once Diana's closest ally, was unceremoniously pushed out in 1967. Not because she lacked talent, but because Motown mogul Berry Gordy saw Diana as the future, and Florence as expendable. Left to battle poverty, addiction, and despair, Florence died tragically in 1976 of liver failure. Diana never fully escaped the shadow of that loss. The guilt stayed with her, etched into every stage she stood on. Even within her family, the bonds were fragile. Her relationship with fellow Supreme Barbara Martin broke down over creative tensions. The sisterhood fractured. Fame brought applause, but it also brought loneliness. Marriage didn't save her, it broke her further. In 1971, Diana wed music executive Robert Ellis Silverstein, hoping for stability. But that hope shattered quickly when whispers surfaced that her eldest daughter, Rhonda, was actually fathered by Berry Gordy, not Robert. The marriage unraveled. They divorced in 1977, leaving Diana to pick up the emotional pieces. She tried again in 1985, marrying Norwegian shipping magnate Arne Næss Jr. For a while. It seemed she had finally found peace. But that too collapsed. Arne fathered a child with another woman, and Diana, now a mother of 5, was left to raise her children alone while her heart quietly broke. Their divorce in 2000 left her more guarded than ever.
Love, once a dream, had become a wound.
Then came the public humiliation. In December 1999, the unthinkable happened. Diana Ross was arrested in Arizona for driving under the influence. Her blood alcohol level was well over the legal limit. The image of the flawless diva crumbled. Mugshots replaced magazine covers. The world didn't just watch her fall, they devoured it. She entered rehab and underwent supervision, struggling to rebuild the grace the headlines had stolen. Behind the lights and legacy is a woman who gave everything. Her voice, her friendships, her heart, and paid a price few ever saw. Diana Ross is more than a legend. She is a survivor of a life that glittered on stage but bled behind the curtain.
Chaka Khan. Chaka Khan, the funk queen who danced with darkness.
She was the voice that lit up the 70s, the fearless frontwoman of Rufus, the soul siren who gave us Ain't Nobody and I'm Every Woman. But behind Chaka Khan's electric stage presence and powerhouse vocals was a woman unraveling in silence. Fame wasn't just fast, it was brutal. The spotlight that crowned her also scorched her, and by the early 80s, Chaka had descended into a blur of drugs, alcohol, and emotional chaos. Cocaine, heroin, and hard liquor became her daily companions, tools to numb the crushing pressure of her career and the pain she couldn't name. In 1982, she woke up in a Los Angeles hotel room with no memory of the night before. Her friends watched helplessly, terrified as she spiraled.
Her health collapsed. Her voice faded.
Her body thinned to the edge of life after a near-fatal overdose. And worst of all, her young daughter Milani witnessed it all, her mother stumbling, broken, drunk. That image haunted Chaka more than any tabloid ever could. She entered rehab in 1989. It wasn't a straight road, there were relapses, regrets, and moments of crushing doubt.
But she fought back. Slowly. Painfully.
And she emerged, wounded, wiser, but no longer chained to the bottle or the needle. Her personal life offered little refuge. 3 marriages, all stormy, all short-lived. Her first, to Hassan Khan in 1970, ended in a year. Her second, to Richard Holland in 1976, gave her a son, Damien, but dissolved in screaming matches and jealousy. A blowout fight in 1979 shattered what was left of their love. Alone again, Chaka faced motherhood with equal parts strength and fear. Then came the unbearable. In 2006, her nephew, Damian Patrick Holland, was shot and killed in Chicago during a gang dispute. The grief nearly crushed her.
She buried him.
She held her family together. But some wounds never close. Even her bond with her son Damian was fraught. In 2004, he was arrested for domestic violence, and Chaka had to post bail. She questioned everything: her choices, her role as a mother, her very identity. Eventually, she stepped away from the spotlight, not in defeat, but in search of something more sacred: healing. Stephanie Mills. Stephanie Mills, the R&B queen whose voice hid a lifetime of pain. Stephanie Mills, the powerhouse behind I Feel Good All Over, reigned on the R&B charts throughout the 80s. But behind that golden voice was a woman battling heartbreak, abuse, and the crushing weight of expectations. Her life was no fairy tale. It was survival in a world that demanded everything and gave little back. In 1980, Stephanie married Jeffrey Daniel of Shalimar, hoping for love and partnership. What she got instead was jealousy, chaos and bruises, emotional and physical. His envy over her fame turned toxic. Arguments flared, and in one unforgettable moment in 1981, Jeffrey struck her during a heated fight at home. The yelling, the fear, the isolation, it all became too much. By 1983, she walked away from the marriage, shaken but not broken. Her second marriage, to Dino Miminger from 1989 to 1991, was no safe haven. It was control disguised as love. Stephanie found herself emotionally caged, stripped of her freedom until she could barely recognize herself. The divorce left her hollow, adrift in a sea of loneliness. Motherhood, though filled with love, brought its own struggles. Her first son, Farid, born in 1980, was often left behind as she chased stages and spotlights. In 1985, after a long tour, little Farid looked into her eyes and asked, "Mom, why aren't you home?" That question shattered her. She realized fame had stolen precious moments she could never get back. Then, in 2001, came a new challenge. Her second son was born with Down syndrome. Fear gripped her heart, but she met it with fierce, unconditional love. Stephanie fought hard to give him everything she could: stability, joy, and a mother who would never leave his side. As the 80s faded and newer voices took the spotlight, the industry grew cold.
Her career slowed.
Doors that once swung wide now barely cracked open. The silence of her phone and the emptiness of her apartment triggered a slow, aching depression. She'd cry alone in the night, wondering if her best days were behind her.
Therapy helped. So did faith. But the scars remained.
Today, Stephanie Mills stands as more than a music icon.
She's a survivor. A mother.
A woman who faced hell and still found a way to sing.
Anita Baker.
Anita Baker, the voice that rose from silence and sorrow. Anita Baker, the velvet-voiced queen behind timeless ballads like Sweet Love, carried more pain behind the mic than most ever knew. In 1960, at just 2 years old, she was abandoned by her birth mother and placed in the care of a stern foster family who nearly crushed her young spirit. The only warmth she knew, her foster mother, passed away in 1974, leaving Anita to fend for herself as a teenager, waiting tables just to survive. Despite her soaring vocals and radiant stage presence, Anita's personal life was clouded by heartbreak. In 1988, she married Walter Bridgeforth Jr., longing for peace but finding herself trapped in a storm of jealousy, silence, and emotional distance. By 1995, after a brutal post-tour fight that left her in tears and exhaustion, it was clear, love didn't live there anymore. Their nearly 20-year marriage finally ended in 2007, leaving Anita to raise their 2 sons alone, her heart worn but still beating. The music industry was no gentler. Behind the Grammys and standing ovations were sleepless nights, legal battles with Elektra Records in the late 80s, and moments when she sobbed in private, terrified her career might collapse. In 1994, she took a brave step back, not for fame, but for survival. Still, the ache of abandonment never fully left her. Therapy and unwavering faith became her lifelines, grounding her through depression, anxiety, and the weight of being misunderstood. Anita Baker didn't just sing about heartbreak, she lived it. And somehow, through every note, she turned her pain into poetry the world could feel.
Jody Watley.
Jody Watley, the R&B star who lit up the charts, but quietly battled heartbreak behind the scenes. She gave us the iconic anthem Looking for a New Love, and ruled the airwaves with her fierce style and undeniable voice. But while the world saw a confident superstar, few knew the pain Jody carried in silence. Born into a preacher's family in Chicago, her childhood was far from peaceful. Turmoil erupted early. Bitter arguments over money and values shattered her home when she was just 10. With her father constantly on the road and her mother left to raise the children alone, Jody became the emotional anchor, wiping her mother's tears, calming her siblings, and burying her own heartbreak deep inside. Frequent moves between Chicago and Los Angeles only deepened her sense of instability. That bright smile the public loved? It masked years of insecurity and loneliness. As an adult, she yearned for stability, marrying musician André Simone in hopes of building a loving home. But instead of healing, their marriage became a battlefield. Despite the joy of their daughter Lauren, born in 1987, jealousy and resentment poisoned their bond. By 1991, the tension had exploded into nightly screaming matches, leaving Jody in tears, trapped in a house that felt like a war zone. Their painful divorce in 1994 left her a single mother juggling heartbreak and career with barely enough strength to breathe. After leaving Shalimar in 1983, Jody's solo career soared, until the industry turned cold. Critics dismissed her, comparing her unfairly, diminishing her artistry, and forcing her to fight not just for hits, but for respect in a music world laced with racism, sexism, and constant judgment. By the late 90s, her albums stopped charting. Her confidence crumbled. Alone in her Los Angeles home, she wept, forgotten by an industry she once helped define. Meditation, therapy, and pure resilience kept her standing. But even now, the shadows of rejection, the ache of instability, and the scars of a childhood lost still whisper to her at night. Jody Watley didn't just survive fame, she survived everything it tried to take from her.
Regina Belle.
Regina Belle, from R&B royalty to a devastating battle for survival. Regina Belle, the powerful voice that brought magic to a whole new world, once soared across global charts. But behind the glittering spotlight was a woman fighting for her life. In 2009, her world came crashing down when doctors discovered a benign brain tumor pressed dangerously close to critical nerves, where surgery could mean survival or death. For over a year, Regina had suffered in silence. Blinding headaches, terrifying dizzy spells, and sudden blackouts turned daily life into a nightmare. Then came the collapse at home in Atlanta. One moment she was standing, the next she couldn't walk, couldn't speak. She spent weeks in the hospital, followed by grueling months of physical therapy, forced to relearn the basics of living, walking, talking, and singing. The fear of never performing again haunted her every breath. But the pain wasn't just physical. As she fought to recover, personal tragedies stacked like weights on her chest. Raised in poverty by a single mother after her parents' bitter divorce, Regina's childhood had already been marked by struggle. And in 2005, she lost the woman who had been her foundation, her mother, to heart disease. The grief nearly broke her. She cried alone at night, swallowed by depression and a silence even music couldn't heal. Her marriage to former NBA star John Battle, once a pillar of strength, was tested in ways neither of them saw coming. Regina became irritable, overwhelmed, buried under the pressure of finances, family obligations, and the fear of failing her 5 children. Guilt gnawed at her, guilt for not being present enough, not being strong enough. The woman who once lit up stages around the world now found herself in the shadows of survival, battling not just for her voice, but for her soul.
Toni Braxton.
Toni Braxton, from R&B royalty to bankruptcy, illness, and heartbreak. Toni Braxton, the unmistakable voice behind Unbreak My Heart, once stood at the very top of the R&B world. But behind the chart-topping hits and Grammy wins was a woman silently battling a storm that would nearly destroy her. In July 1998, at the height of her fame, Toni shocked the world by filing for bankruptcy, buried under $3.9 million in debt. Despite her success, she was trapped in a suffocating contract with LaFace Records, earning pennies while her lavish tours drained her finances. In a tearful interview, she confessed to the humiliation of being a broke superstar, on the verge of losing her home. But the heartbreak didn't stop there. In October 2010, she filed for bankruptcy again, this time with debts between $10 and $50 million, due to mounting medical bills, unpaid taxes, and mismanaged finances. She sold off assets, downsized her life, and quietly battled depression. Then came the cruelest twist: systemic lupus. This devastating autoimmune disease began ravaging her body in the late 2000s, causing chronic fatigue, painful joint inflammation, and terrifying health scares. In 2008, she collapsed mid-performance during her Las Vegas residency. Hospital visits, steroid treatments, and flare-ups became part of her reality. One episode in December 2012 nearly ended her spirit altogether. Her personal life crumbled under the pressure. She married Keri Lewis in 2001, and together they had 2 sons, Denim and Diesel. But illness, money struggles, and relentless touring took their toll. Fights over finances became frequent in their Atlanta home, and by 2009, the couple separated, finalizing their divorce in 2013. Toni, once a music queen, was now a single mother struggling to hold it all together. And even the spotlight of Braxton family values couldn't mask the tension within her own family, where conflict with her sisters added another layer of pain to an already fragile heart. Toni Braxton didn't just face adversity, she lived through it, raw and unfiltered. And somehow, she's still standing. Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige, the queen of hip-hop soul, didn't just sing about pain, she survived it. Behind that powerhouse voice was a girl who grew up in chaos. Her father walked out when she was just 4, leaving her mother to raise 2 kids alone in the harsh streets of Yonkers. At 7, Mary was molested, an unspeakable trauma that shattered her sense of safety and sent her spiraling into years of self-doubt and silence. As her music career exploded in the 90s, so did her addictions. Fame couldn't numb the pain. Drugs and alcohol became her escape, leading to a terrifying overdose where she woke up in a hotel room surrounded by panicked friends, unsure if she was alive or dead. Rock bottom wasn't just a phrase, it was real. In 2004, she found a lifeline in faith in rehab, in the grit to keep going. But the demons didn't end there. Her marriage to manager Kendu Isaacs started with promise and ended in torment. What should have been her safe place turned into another battlefield, controlling behavior, verbal abuse, violence. Their bitter divorce in 2018 tore her apart emotionally and financially, with court-ordered alimony adding insult to injury. Mary once said those years felt like her entire life had been shattered, like she was standing in front of a wall that had been smashed to pieces. But she didn't quit. She picked up those pieces and started building again. From pain, from ashes, from strength. Hoy ChatGPT. Erykah Badu. Erykah Badu wasn't just an R&B icon, she was a soul navigator caught in the eye of love's fiercest storms. The queen behind On and On soared with spiritual depth and sonic brilliance, but her personal life told a different story, one of heartbreak, pressure, and survival. In the mid-90s, her high-profile relationship with Andre 3000 was more collision than harmony. They welcomed their son, Seven, in 1997, but the romance unraveled by 1999, strained by jealousy, fame, and diverging paths. Later entanglements with the DOC and J Electronica brought more than love. They carried whispers of betrayal, public scrutiny, and emotional chaos. Being a single mother at the height of her career wasn't just challenging, it was crushing. She broke down when young Seven once asked, "Why are you always gone?" The guilt, the sleepless nights, the unrelenting pressure to provide, it all took its toll. Then came the infamous window seat video, filmed nude at the site of JFK's assassination. Meant as an artistic protest, it instead triggered outrage, fines, and a media firestorm that rattled both her public image and inner peace. In the face of it all, love lost, public backlash, motherhood's weight, Erykah turned inward. Meditation became her anchor. Because while the world saw a fearless artist, she was also a woman just trying to stay grounded in the chaos of fame, motherhood, and a heart that had been tested too many times. Jill Scott. Jill Scott, the soulful voice that rose from pain. Jill Scott, the golden voice behind A Long Walk, didn't just sing about life, she survived it. Beneath the smooth R&B melodies was a woman grappling with heartbreak, betrayal, and the scars of a violent past. Her first marriage to Liesl Williams began with hope but unraveled under the weight of fame and relentless touring. By 2006, their love had turned into silence and arguments. Their 2007 divorce shattered her belief in forever. Then came her second marriage to Mike Dobson, brief, bitter, and publicly messy. It lasted only 15 months, ending with legal battles and demands that left her emotionally bankrupt. But Jill's story of struggle didn't start there. Growing up in North Philadelphia, she witnessed things no child should see: violence, abandonment, and the hollow ache of fatherlessness. And even as she rose to fame, motherhood brought its own heartbreak. Alone, exhausted, and drowning in guilt, she cried when her young son begged for her attention she was too drained to give. The weight of it all, fame, motherhood, loneliness, dragged her into depression. But Jill didn't stay down. She turned to therapy, faced her demons, and began the painful work of healing. From the ashes of her past, she found the strength to stand tall and sing with even more soul. Faith Evans. Faith Evans, a life torn between love, loss, and survival. Faith Evans, the soulful voice behind I'll Be Missing You, lived a life that was anything but peaceful. Her whirlwind marriage to the notorious Blige in 1994, just 8 days after they met, wasn't a love story, it was a storm. Their relationship spiraled into a tangle of jealousy, explosive fights, and violence. One terrifying night in 1995, Biggie struck her during a heated argument, forcing her to run for safety. A year later, she gave birth to their son. And then, in 1997, the unthinkable, Biggie was gunned down. She was left shattered, a young widow and single mother grappling with depression and grief while the world watched. But the pain didn't start there. Faith's childhood was marked by struggle. Her father vanished before she knew him. She was raised by a hard-working single mother and clung to her grandmother, her only steady source of love, until she too passed away. Then in 2004, another blow hit hard. Faith and her second husband were arrested for drug possession. Headlines questioned her character. Critics doubted her strength. Rehab followed, and so did the long uphill battle to reclaim her life and career. Through heartbreak, public scrutiny, and personal demons, Faith Evans never found lasting peace, but she never stopped fighting for it either.
Syleena Johnson. Syleena Johnson, a voice forged in storms. Her voice could move mountains, but behind it was a life full of pain, pressure, and perseverance. Syleena Johnson, the soulful R&B powerhouse best known for Guess What, didn't just sing about heartbreak, she lived it. Her childhood was chaos. Her father, the legendary Syl Johnson, was barely present. Her mother raised her alone, surrounded by arguments fueled by jealousy and money. Little Syleena often hid behind closed doors, trembling as the family she loved unraveled. When her parents divorced in the late 80s, it felt like the final blow, leaving her emotionally adrift and shaping how she would later love and trust. Her marriage to former NBA player Kevin Garris seemed like a fresh start. But behind the smiles were cracks, constant tension between career demands, parenting struggles, and the weight of unspoken resentment. The marriage collapsed in 2013, just as Syleena was quietly fighting another demon, her weight. Stress and heartbreak pushed her over 200 pounds. The mirror became her enemy, until she bravely chose gastric sleeve surgery, a painful, emotional journey marked by fear of judgment and nights soaked in tears. Still, she rises. Every step forward is a war, but Syleena Johnson never stops fighting. Because behind that powerhouse voice is a woman who refuses to be broken. Brandy. Brandy, the R&B star haunted by tragedy and silence. Brandy, the golden voice behind The Boy Is Mine, once ruled the charts with confidence and grace. But behind the spotlight was a woman battling heartbreak, guilt, and the crushing weight of public scrutiny. On December 30, 2006, her life took a devastating turn. Driving on LA's 405 freeway, Brandy was involved in a multi-car crash that claimed the life of a woman. Though never criminally charged, the emotional toll was staggering. Guilt swallowed her whole. She fell into a deep depression, isolated, weeping nightly, too terrified to sit behind the wheel again. But the wreck was only the beginning. Her relationship with producer Robert Big Bert Smith unraveled during her pregnancy, leaving her to raise their daughter Sarai alone. She toured without her child, aching from the separation. On stage, she sang. Off stage, she cried. Her engagement to NBA star Quentin Richardson collapsed in a storm of doubts and broken trust. Then came Human, an album meant to heal but instead flopped, followed by a reality show that exposed more pain than progress. Brandy wasn't just navigating fame. She was surviving it. Behind the bright lights was a woman drowning in fear, disappointment, and a loneliness that fame couldn't fix. Maya. Maya, the Lady Marmalade star who danced through the fire. She lit up the stage with Lady Marmalade, her voice and presence unforgettable. But behind the glamorous spotlight, Maya was quietly battling storms few ever saw. Her childhood was marked by chaos, parents locked in constant arguments over money, a divorce that shattered the foundation beneath her feet. Raised by her mother in a rough neighborhood, Maya grew up watching fights spill into the streets and fear creep into her home. She learned early how to survive, but not how to trust. That loneliness followed her into adulthood, making love hard to find and harder to hold on to. In the early 2000s, her name made headlines for high-profile romances, but behind the scenes, heartbreak and rumors cut deep. As she entered her 30s, the world's pressure on single women became unbearable. She cried alone, wondering if she was still enough, still beautiful, still wanted, still worthy. Her career hit a wall when her album Liberation was shelved, triggering a spiral of anxiety, doubt, and silence from an industry that once celebrated her. She faced racism, sexism, and the harsh reality of being an independent black woman in music. Maya didn't quit. She scraped by on indie shows and side gigs, hustling to stay relevant in a world that had moved on. Every note she sang, every stage she stepped on, was a quiet act of defiance. She didn't just perform, she fought. For her voice. For her peace. For her worth. Monica. Monica, the angel of mine who walked through fire. Monica, the soulful voice behind Angel of Mine, was once seen as R&B's pure-hearted princess. But behind the elegance and vocal grace was a woman carrying invisible scars, of trauma, heartbreak, and survival. Her most devastating moment came on July 18, 2000. Sitting beside her boyfriend Jarvis Williams in a car parked near a cemetery, everything changed in a flash. Without warning, Jarvis pulled out a gun and shot himself in the head. Monica held him in her arms as life slipped away, powerless, shattered. That image would follow her like a ghost, dragging her into a deep, paralyzing depression. Her pain didn't start there. Monica grew up in chaos. Her parents divorced when she was just 4, and she was raised in a rough neighborhood where survival was a daily ritual. Her soul was always on edge, her spirit constantly in fight mode. Years later, when she married NBA star Shannon Brown, it looked like a fairy tale. But fame and pressure are cruel companions. Rumors of infidelity and growing emotional distance cracked the foundation. In 2019, the marriage ended in heartbreak, leaving Monica to raise their 3 children while holding her own world together. Today, she fights quietly but fiercely. Against the weight of her past. Against the pressure of the present. Monica may have been an angel in song, but in life, she's a warrior forged in pain, still rising. Amerie. Amerie, the voice behind One Thing, and a chain of silent struggles. Amerie wasn't just the powerhouse voice behind the 2005 smash hit One Thing. She was a storm wrapped in soul, beauty, and pain. Behind the glamorous spotlight was a woman shaped by constant upheaval. Her childhood was a blur of military relocations, from icy Alaska to the heat of Texas, then across the Atlantic to Germany and finally Virginia. The moves were jarring, but it was the return to the US in 1989, at just 9 years old, that broke something inside her. Bullied, isolated, and torn between cultures, Amerie began to question where she truly belonged. Home offered no refuge, her parents' arguments chipped away at her self-worth. Then came One Thing, and with it, a taste of stardom. But success didn't bring peace, it brought pressure. Delays in her follow-up album triggered a spiral of anxiety. Locked in her room, feeling abandoned by an industry that once celebrated her, she wrestled with depression. Whispers of racism and demands to change her image only deepened the wound. Love offered little relief, rumors, heartbreaks, and public speculation drained her spirit. Even marriage in 2011 couldn't silence the noise. Expectations to start a family quickly pulled her into another quiet storm. Behind the scenes, she cried in silence, searching for clarity, for control, for a sliver of peace in a life that always seemed just a step away from chaos. Amerie didn't just sing about the one thing. She lived 1,000 more, most of them in silence. Ashanti. Ashanti, the foolish star lost in the storms of love and fame. Ashanti, once crowned the princess of early 2000s R&B with her smash hit Foolish, may have conquered the charts, but behind the spotlight was a woman weathering endless emotional storms. Her decade-long romance with rapper Nelly, which began in 2003, played out like a roller coaster of passion and pain. By 2008, their fairy tale was cracking. Arguments over conflicting schedules and swirling rumors of infidelity turned sweet moments into shouting matches. In 2012, whispers of Nelly's alleged new flame pushed her past the edge, and by 2014, it was over, leaving Ashanti with a heart full of betrayal and a shattered belief in love. Her career, once blazing hot, dimmed after Foolish. Follow-up albums stalled, her name faded from headlines, and behind closed doors, she spiraled into anxiety. She cried alone, questioning an industry that once embraced her, now seemingly indifferent. And the pressure didn't stop there. Childhood memories of parental conflict, mixed with the stress of being managed by her own mother, added fuel to the fire. Still, Ashanti didn't collapse. Through yoga, therapy, and holding tight to the few family members who stood by her, she found moments of peace in the chaos. Hers is not just a story of fame, but of surviving the storms fame brings. Kelly Rowland. Kelly Rowland, the Destiny's Child star who carried pain behind the spotlight. Kelly Rowland may have lit up the stage with Destiny's Child and soared with hits like Dilemma, but behind that radiant smile was a world of pain she rarely spoke about. Born in Atlanta, Kelly's childhood was anything but a fairy tale. Her father, gripped by alcoholism, turned violent, often lashing out at her mother in terrifying rages. One brutal fight in 1988 left 7-year-old Kelly trembling in fear, hiding from the chaos. A year later, her mother left, and Kelly's life as the daughter of a single mom began, filled with struggle, scars, and silent strength. Fame didn't erase the heartbreak. In 2004, she fell deeply for NFL star Roy Williams. They got engaged quickly, but just 2 months before the wedding, Kelly called it off. She spent days crying in her Houston home, devastated and questioning everything. As she balanced the weight of a solo career and later, motherhood, the comparisons to Beyoncé became suffocating. No matter how hard she worked, she was often painted as the second best. It wore her down, pushing her into a quiet depression. She would lock herself in her room for hours, tears soaking her pillow, feeling invisible in an industry that demands perfection, especially from black women. But Kelly didn't break. Through therapy and meditation, she found her footing again, slowly rebuilding her self-worth in a world that constantly tried to chip it away. Behind the glamour is a woman who survived heartbreak, judgment, and inner battles, and still stands with grace and grit. LeToya Luckett. LeToya Luckett, once the voice of hope and Destiny's Child, was thrust from the spotlight into heartbreak and survival. In 1999, without warning, she was kicked out of the group she helped build. She found out the same way fans did, by watching the Say My Name video and realizing she'd been replaced. That betrayal shattered more than her career. It stripped her of friends, money, and confidence, leaving her alone and broken in Houston, battling depression behind closed doors. Love brought no rescue. Her first marriage lasted barely 2 months, marked by constant arguments and crushing disappointment. Her second, once full of promise, ended in a stormy 2021 divorce, with cheating rumors and custody disputes dragging her name through the headlines. Born in a tough Houston neighborhood where violence was a daily backdrop, LeToya learned to fight for every inch of peace. Fame came early, too early, and the pressure nearly crushed her. Anxiety and self-doubt became constant shadows. But she didn't give up. Through therapy, tears, and time, she began to heal. Step by painful step, she rebuilt herself, not just as an artist, but as a survivor in an industry that nearly destroyed her. Keyshia Cole. Keyshia Cole, a voice forged in pain and resilience. From abandonment to betrayal, from the streets of Oakland to the peaks of R&B fame, Keyshia Cole's journey has been anything but easy. The voice behind Let It Go was shaped by a childhood full of heartbreak. Born to an addicted mother and an absent father, she was adopted at just 2 years old. Her earliest memories were painted with chaos, gunshots echoing through her violent neighborhood, blood on the pavement, and a constant ache of feeling unwanted. Her mother's repeated arrests for drug offenses left emotional scars that ran deep. Even when love came knocking, peace never stayed long. Her marriage to NBA star Daniel Gibson began with promise and the birth of a son, but behind the public smiles were whispered infidelities, explosive arguments, and the crushing weight of fame. By 2017, it ended in a bitter divorce, with custody battles that reopened old wounds. But nothing hit harder than 2021, when her mother died of an overdose, on Keyshia's birthday. It was a devastating blow that shattered her spirit. Public family feuds, deep depression, and sleepless, tear-stained nights followed. Yet somehow, through the pain, she kept singing. Her voice, raw, wounded, and achingly honest, became her lifeline and her legacy. Keyshia Cole didn't just survive. She turned her sorrow into song, and her heartbreak into healing. Keri Hilson. Keri Hilson, from R&B glory to silent struggles. Keri Hilson lit up the R&B world like a supernova with her hit Knock You Down. A rising star with beauty, talent, and undeniable presence, she seemed unstoppable. Her 2009 debut album soared, catapulting her into the spotlight. But just 1 year later, the momentum crashed. Her 2010 follow-up album underperformed, and with it came a wave of criticism that would shake her to her core. By 2011, Keri had retreated from the public eye, crying herself to sleep night after night, consumed by feelings of failure and the suffocating pressure of the industry. The comparisons were relentless, pitting her against Beyoncé and Ciara. Whispers turned into headlines. Fans accused her of jealousy. Online boycotts grew. Her rumored feud with Ciara became the talk of red carpets, with the two deliberately avoiding each other at industry events. Meanwhile, her turbulent romance with NBA star Serge Ibaka was a storm of its own. Marked by heated phone calls, emotional ups and downs, and an ever-spinning cycle of breakups and reconciliations. The media only made it worse, painting her as bitter, broken, and fading fast. But behind the scenes, Keri was fighting for herself. Through therapy, reflection, and inner work, she began to rebuild, piece by piece. She faced her fears head-on, not of being forgotten, but of losing herself in the chaos. Keri Hilson may have stepped away from the charts, but her story is far from over. It's one of resilience, rebirth, and the quiet strength it takes to survive when the spotlight burns too hot. Michelle, a life marked by pain, scars, and survival. Michelle, the powerhouse behind Can't Raise a Man, didn't just sing about heartbreak. She lived it. Behind the voice was a woman fighting through violence, betrayal, and devastating physical trauma. In the early 2000s, she was viciously attacked by a man in the music industry. The beating, which took place in a hotel room in Atlanta in 2008, left her bloodied, bruised, and crawling for safety. She survived, but the emotional wounds never fully healed. Years later, another relationship would leave her quietly sobbing behind closed doors, emotionally broken and no longer trusting love. In 2014, Desperate to feel beautiful, she underwent silicone butt injections. But by 2017, her dream turned into a nightmare. The implants began to swell, poison her body, and nearly cost her life. 4 brutal surgeries followed. Blood loss, infections, and hospital stays pushed her to the brink, physically and emotionally. And while she fought to heal her body, her family life unraveled. A deep rift with her mother and siblings led to years of silence. Her father's hospitalization only deepened the stress, forcing her to juggle single motherhood with unbearable physical pain and emotional fatigue. Through it all, Michelle kept singing. But every note carried the weight of a woman who's been through hell, and lived to tell the story. Fantasia Barrino. Fantasia Barrino, from American Idol glory to the edge of despair. She was the voice that gave us chills, the R&B powerhouse who brought I Believe to life and became a symbol of hope after winning American Idol in 2004. But behind Fantasia Barrino's rise to stardom was a life marked by pain few could imagine. Born in North Carolina, her childhood was a storm of poverty and conflict, with parents constantly clashing over money. At just 14 in 1998, her world shattered when she was assaulted by a schoolmate, an unspoken trauma that crushed her confidence and led her to drop out of school. Success brought spotlight, but not peace. By 2008, she was drowning in tax debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars owed, with creditors circling, loans piling up, and the shame of begging for financial help while raising a child alone. Then came 2010. A scandalous affair with married man Antoine Cook ignited media firestorms and lawsuits. The pressure was unbearable. On August 9, 2010, Fantasia attempted to take her own life with sleeping pills. She was found just in time. Though she found love and married in 2015, and kept performing, the ghosts of her past never fully let go. Fantasia's journey is not just about fame, it's about survival. A story of a woman who rose from pain, fell into darkness, and still stood back up, scarred but unbroken. Tamia. Tamia, the R&B voice that refused to break. Tamia, the soulful powerhouse behind So Into You, didn't just win hearts with her voice, she earned deep respect for the battle she fought when the spotlight faded. In 2003, at just 28, Tamia was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a relentless disease that attacks the nervous system, stealing strength, balance, and even hope. She began experiencing terrifying symptoms: numbness, overwhelming fatigue, and one day, a sudden fall in her home. But it wasn't until she collapsed before a show that reality forced its way in. Behind the glamorous image, Tamia was quietly waging war. While raising 2 daughters and trying to sustain her career, she lived in constant fear of her condition worsening. The pressure seeped into her marriage to NBA star Grant Hill. Arguments over health, over touring, over everything, left her crying alone, questioning her strength. And this wasn't the first time life had tested her. Growing up in a rough neighborhood in Canada, Tamia had witnessed violence, poverty, and the crushing grief of losing her grandmother, the woman who had been her anchor. But through it all, Tamia didn't crumble. She stood tall. With grace, grit, and unwavering love for her family and music, she turned her pain into power, and reminded the world that even in the darkest storms, some voices only grow stronger. Meli'sa Morgan. Meli'sa Morgan, the R&B star who rose from darkness with nothing but her voice. Meli'sa Morgan, the sultry voice behind Do Me Baby, once lit up the charts with a tone so rich, it stopped people in their tracks. But behind that soulful sound was a life haunted by heartbreak and hardship. Born in Queens, New York, her childhood unraveled early. At just 10 years old, she watched her parents' bitter divorce tear their home apart in 1974, with constant arguments over money echoing through the walls. Poverty followed. Violence spilled into the streets outside. Meli'sa grew up withdrawn, anxious, and isolated. After her breakout success in 1986, her star began to fade. By the early 90s, the deals were gone, the spotlight dimmed. She performed in tiny clubs just to scrape by. In 1992, she faced eviction, broke, ashamed, and a far cry from the rising star she once was. Depression hit hard. She wept alone as her romantic relationship from the late 80s crumbled. By 2010, Meli'sa was middle-aged, single, childless, and battling the weight of loneliness and a society quick to forget women like her. But through it all, she kept singing, not for fame, but for survival. Pebbles. Pebbles, the R&B queen who rose high, and fell even harder. She gave us Mercedes Boy and helped build TLC into a global powerhouse. For a moment, Pebbles wasn't just on top of the charts, she was building empires. But behind the glamour, her life unraveled in ways the spotlight never showed. Her first marriage in 1982 to a wealthy businessman quickly turned into a cage. By 1983,
a violent argument ended with him slapping her across the face, a moment that shattered her illusions and led to divorce. She found love again in 1989, marrying music mogul L.A. Reid, but the dream soured fast. Fights, pressure, and heartbreak led to another painful split in 1996, leaving her alone with a child and the weight of lost dreams. Then came the storm she never saw coming. TLC, the very group she helped launch, sued her in 1995 for unfair contracts. The media turned savage, branding her a villain. She countersued, but the damage was done. Her name, once golden, was now a target. She disappeared from the music scene, bruised, silenced, erased. And in 2013, the deepest wound of all, her own son publicly criticized her on national television. It was betrayal at its most personal, and it broke her spirit. Depressed and devastated, Pebbles found one last lifeline: faith. She turned to God, not to rise again as a star, but to survive as a soul clinging to something greater than fame. Shanice. Shanice, from a radiant smile to silent tears over money, family, and depression. Shanice, the angelic R&B voice who gave the world "I Love Your Smile," once lit up the charts, and our hearts, with her infectious joy. But behind that signature smile was a storm no one saw coming. After her breakout success in 1991, the music industry moved on, and Shanice's career slowly faded into the background. By 2002, the lights had dimmed so much that she found herself nearly penniless, fearing eviction, and too ashamed to answer the door. A mother of two, she went from stadiums to small bars, singing just to buy milk. The pressure crushed her spirit. At one point, she had to send her children to live with relatives, helpless as they cried out for her. In 2005, things only got worse when her husband lost his job, placing even more weight on her already fragile shoulders. By 2007, Shanice locked herself away in silence, crying for hours, feeling like a ghost in the industry she once ruled. She questioned everything: her talent, her purpose, her future, while battling constant pressure to change who she was, to fit a mold she never signed up for. By 2010, she broke. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Insomnia haunted her nights. Fear of failure choked her days. The only things keeping her afloat were her husband, her faith, and therapy. In the ever-shifting world of entertainment, fame is fleeting, and beauty fades in the industry's harsh spotlight. But voices like Shanice's, voices that once brought joy, truth, and love, deserve to be remembered, even if the world has moved on. If her story touched you, or if you're shocked by how some of these artists live today, leave a comment below. Let's give them the love they were too often denied. And if you haven't yet, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell. There are so many untold stories still waiting to be heard.